Hi, I'm Owen Casey Stevens, and this is the story of how I ended up drunk on champagne at the age of 8. When I was 8, my parents were sort of trying to get into the 1970s going around and having house parties scene in Norman, Oklahoma, which wasn't perhaps as lively a party scene as some other places might have been. And there was a time where they decided to take myself and my older sister over to a New Year's Eve party at a colleague's house. This was just a few blocks from our house, and it was, I believe, a doctor. As I said, I was 8 at the time, and even without the getting drunk part, my memory of it is pretty hazy. I remember that they had a really nice house. I remember that there were a lot of adults and a lot of children. I remember that the older children, like my sister, were mostly going and playing in a game room, and the rest of us were watching the movie The Great Race on a large television. I don't think it was like a big screen. It might have been a projection, but it was the biggest television I had ever seen at that point. It was a lovely carpeted room. There was brick planters inside that room, and they decided it was okay if all of us, and there were, I don't know, more than a dozen of us, maybe 20 of us, of all of us younger kids, each got about an ounce of champagne. And then after that, we were supposed to switch to Sprite. So we were each given these little tiny flute glasses with just a little bit of champagne, maybe 2 ounces, but not a whole lot. And then the parents went back to doing parental things, being adults, going off elsewhere, because we each had our one glass, and it's not like they left the bottle with us. However, most kids didn't even like the smell of the champagne. They looked at the champagne, they sniffed the champagne, and they kind of all determined, champagne's not their thing. And the whole gaggle of them decided that they were going to just go straight to Sprite, which was in Dixie cups. I decided I wanted to try champagne, so I drank my 2 ounces of champagne, and I liked it. I've always actually been a fan of really cheap champagne, sort of wet champagne rather than dry champagne, and this was pretty clearly wet, cheap champagne. I doubt it was from Champagne, France. But in any case, so all the other kids had no interest, and I thought it was neat. So since they had all put their glasses down, I asked if any of them had any interest in drinking their champagne or if I could finish it off. And they all was like, no, it's fine. Go ahead. Now, I have always been a big person. So at 8, I was a big 8-year-old. But 20 little tiny flutes of champagne is still a fair amount of champagne. So I'm sitting there with a tray with nothing but little tiny plastic champagne flutes on it, sitting next to me on an ottoman while I'm sitting in front of the television watching The Great Race, which my memory of that movie is that it's hysterical, but I haven't watched it since I was drunk on champagne at the age of 8, so I don't guarantee that it's actually hysterical. I've always meant to go back and see it again. And I'm just drinking 2 ounces of champagne at a time, a little shot here, shot there. Occasionally they would bring out apple slices and cheese, and I would maybe nibble on that. But other than that, it was just sit in front of the television and drink champagne. Now, in our parents' defense, they didn't ignore us. They came and checked on us. And I'm sure that if I had been screaming and knocking things over and staggering around, someone would have noticed, oh, hey, that little fat kid in the corner is bogarting all of the champagne. But I was just quietly sitting watching a arguably science fiction movie from the 1960s, and that was a pretty normal activity for me at age 8. And I loved it. I didn't have to talk to the other kids. Things got funnier and funnier as time went on. I was more and more relaxed. I thought champagne was great. Towards the end of the evening, my mother came and checked on my sister and I sort of more directly. My sister had moved into that room to the other room and had, in fact, given me her glass of champagne because she knew since she was a little older than me that she didn't like it. And my mother saw that I had this tray of, at that point, nearly empty champagne glasses and that I was reaching for one more. And my mother asked me, honey, have you had more than one of those? Have a few people? I was like, no, I've done all of this. These are all mine. I've enjoyed all of the champagne. Champagne's great. Can I have some more champagne? And my mother was horrified. Now, no direct harm came of this. I did not puke. I did not have a hangover the next day, although that may have to do with the fact that my mother took me home and made sure that I drank plenty of fluids like chicken broth and tomato juice. I'm not sure if she knew that that was the right combination of fluids or if I just got lucky. But I was kind of firmly told, look, if other kids are given a thing and they don't want it, that doesn't mean that you get all of it. That was it. I'm sure that I was ushered out of there pretty quickly at that point, but I'm going to be honest with you. Other than my mother's look of horror on her face and the fact that she made me drink both tomato juice and chicken broth when we got home, that end of the evening period is a little fuzzy for me, and I think I know why. Weirdly, I did not mostly drink any other alcohol for the next, 20 years of my life. I had a few sips of white wine. I tried a beer with my father when I was younger. I was exactly the age that when I was 17, the drinking age in Oklahoma switched from 18 to 21. So I couldn't drink when I was 18. Now, I said I didn't drink much for 20 years after that. That's not quite true, because when I was 18, my family took a trip to Canada because we were having our last family trip. My sister had graduated from high school, or from college, I'm sorry. And the drinking age was 18 up in Canada, and I ended up having access to a free mini fridge in a hotel suite as a result of my father being a very canny world traveler. That's sort of its own story. We'll see if I ever get to it. But I did at that point discover, A, I like stout, not any other beer. B, I do not like hard liquor unless you cut it with a lot of fruit juice. I'm not ashamed to say that I like fruity drinks way more than I like, say, shots of whiskey or bourbon or whatever, although I have done those. And I discovered what a hangover was, and for the most part, avoided that. I had another drink when I was 21, and then there was a really long stretch after that where I had the occasional drink to toast other people's weddings, for that matter, my wedding, where at my wedding, because I was not 21, I needed my parents' permission to drink a glass of champagne at our rehearsal dinner. And then under Oklahoma law, once I was married, because I was under 21, my wife became my legal guardian, so I needed my wife's permission to have a glass of champagne at the reception. And then I really didn't drink until I moved to Seattle and became a full-time game writer in the industry and with other jobs. And then, like a lot of writers, I ended up doing a little more drinking, but still not like you might think when I tell the story that I got drunk on champagne at the age of 8.